All right, that should do it. Good to see everybody again. I think I see a lot of familiar faces. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to do a walkthrough of some of the new SmartForm pages that you guys will see when you log into the new eIRB system in July. So we just have a few slides to go through before we get started. Basically reminders of some of the things we've talked about. So during the month of May, we talked a lot about the HRPP toolkit, right? And so the point of having the toolkit documents along with the system is that together that helps us be more efficient, ready for eIRB accreditation. It really helps us be a little bit more flexible and agile where it comes to assessing IRB submissions. So the toolkit templates, I just want to give everybody an update. Our website, so the publicly facing DHH website, should be live by end of day today. If you need a template to get started on a new submission and the site isn't up, please just email us at eIRB@Hitchcock and we'll send it out to you. That is where everything will be posted, but if you need something before that site is fully live, please, that's not a problem. We can get it out to you. So what is the toolkit? We have our workflows, standard operating procedures, checklists, worksheets, and templates. The checklist and worksheets will also be available on the website as of today. And those are the things that will help you and will be pointed to within those protocol and consent templates. So we want to make sure you have all of the reference materials that you have as well. I think the one thing that you'll see the list of all of our SOPs. We're not going to post all of our SOPs. We're going to post the ones that are relevant to you all as investigators, the ones that are really relevant to how we manage our IRB meetings or how we manage our office operations. Not very relevant. They're just things that we need internally. We will have most of these materials available by end of day today, if not tomorrow morning. If you guys want to push anybody who knows anybody in the IT group to say, let's get these live faster, you let me know if you have that power. And so with the IRB system, one of the things that you'll notice is that we are using automation where automation helps. So some of the questions you were used to seeing in the smart forms for CPHS, those have been stripped out. It's not to say that that's not important information or not relevant information, but what it is information that we won't need for reporting purposes. And so we only put things into the smart forms that are needed for reporting. So we can add data that's relevant for us locally. I'll show you what some of that looks like. Those are things like the drugs and device lists, so things that you guys have already entered into the system that we want to make sure are available to you come July. The other things that you'll see are attachment types or research locations. Those things will come over and be things that are relevant as well. Again, this is meant to keep us operating very efficiently. So the data that we care about in the IRB, there are those data points that we want for reporting that are in the smart forms, but we look at your protocol, we look at your consent form, we look at your materials, and that's what drives our review. And we don't want to ask you guys to answer questions in smart forms that are meant to be answered by regulatory experts. We want you guys to answer the questions that you know the answers to, let the IRB make the decisions that are relevant for the regulations. So this is just a reminder of the workflow. Today, what we'll show you is really essentially the incoming request piece. So when you first create a new submission, our later sessions will get into those follow-on submissions and how you respond to the IRB inquiries. Just want to go over a few definitions. I don't want to be talking jargon at all of you today. So these should be things that are relatively familiar. So when I say things like my inbox, that's going to be where the list of your action items are within the system. The smart forms, those are those pages that we'll walk through. That's where you're entering in data. The IRB also has a smart form set that we enter data in to communicate back to you. The workspace, that'll be that's your landing page for that study, and I'll point that out when we get there, but it essentially is where you manage that submission or that study. The history, so we have the history tab that will show you all of the various actions that have happened with your submission. It's your audit trail of that study. We've got the workflow map. I did give you guys a preview of that the last time we were here, and it's basically, you now will have a visual of that workflow that you can see where your submission is at any point in time. The state, so that's where your study or your submission is at any given time. So whether it's in the pre-submission state, or it's in the eIRB review state, or it's in the approved state, that state will be visible to you at all points throughout the process. And then activities. So these are the things, these are the buttons that you can push to actually do something to manage your submission. Notifications, that's when you actually get something from the system to you from our office. The notifications will take the form of an email with a link to that submission that says you need to do something with this submission. Metadata, that's my favorite. It's above the workflow map, I'll point it out. It's just basically your bio of the study. So it's gonna tell you things like who the eIRB office is, study title, things like that. And I'll point it out when we're actually in the system. Audit trail we talked about. It's a list of events that has shown you what has happened with the submission over time. And then the study ID, the auto-generated number in the system that's linked to either your submission or the study. Okay, so the reason I walk through all those definitions and the reason they're included in the PowerPoint is just because when these are posted, I want to make them available to you. So you guys are working off of the same definitions we are. Okay, show of hands, who's ready for a demo? Oh, well then I guess half you need to go. All right, so give me 1 second and I'll switch screens here for the demo. Just like with the other presentations, if I'm moving through something and you have a question, please feel free to shout it out, especially because I'm going to be looking at the screen a lot of the time. I may not see a hand if it's up, okay? All right, so let's see if technology will be our friend today. Uh-oh. As any good IT person will tell you, just turn it on and off again. Okay. Okay, so this is the login page. Let me see if I can enhance the screen for you. There we go. We took a copy, essentially, of Rapport and made the same information available to you here. So this is our eIRB page. We will have a logo here. That's still getting built. And so you have your login information that's available to you here. The update that I have for you regarding logins. So what we're doing in the short term is your Rapport login will work in the DHH eIRB system. We're going to stick with that, and the reason why is because that is what's tying your profile to all of your studies. So if you log in with your Hitchcock ID on July 1, you actually wouldn't see anything. We have that tie for you right now linked to Rapport. Future state, the goal is to have it all linked to Hitchcock, but for right now and in the transition timeframe, this is the safer way to manage it. So you would log in with your Rapport login here. Okay, so for the purposes of this, I'm gonna log in as the PI. Okay, looks fairly familiar, right? So you have your inbox here. Nothing to do because you guys are all on top of your game. You have all your submissions cleaned up, so we're just going to create a new study. So, okay. Everybody in the back, can you see this okay? And I know there is another monitor back there, so I hope it helps. Okay, so title of the study, we're gonna say test demo study. And then it's gonna say 6-4 demo. Brief description. Okay, so these are questions you guys are probably used to seeing. Question 4 is new. What kind of study is this? Yes?
At some point, and I don't care whether it's now or at the end, can you say a little something about what you guys are looking for in a brief description? Because I think that's been a source of confusion from time to time.
Yes. Take a note, please. I will say one thing about this, and anywhere we have question marks, we're actually customizing the help text for these items, so we can add that to your point. This brief description is a brief summary. It doesn't have to be very long about what is the purpose of the study. It can include things like, you know, a high-level overview of who you plan to enroll. So if it's something like this study involves children, that's good to know in that. One thing that I've been asked recently is if this is something we can leverage for that non-clinical lay summary that the CTO requests. I would like to be able to get to that point. So what we want to do is just harmonize what they're asking for versus what we're asking for, and I think it can align. So that is basically what we're looking at for that. Think about it this way. If I have to print a report that says, here's the study number, here's the PI, and then here's the description of what the study is, can you give me a few sentences about what this study actually is? That helps me understand very high level. But we can definitely customize that help text as well.
Is there a character limit?
I think you have to get to an extreme amount of characters to hit the limit. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm happy to check for you. Yeah. This is where I need the technical group in there. All right. So what kind of study is this? This is in the new version of the system. This triggers some logic. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about what happens if you click the first button about multi-site or collaborative. Today, we're going to focus on single-site study, okay? Will an external IRB act as the IRB of record for this study? Again, this triggers certain SmartForm pages to pop up. We're going to say yes to this tomorrow. Today, we're going to say no. I will tell you that if this were a scenario where it's a single-site study, but eIRB is going to be the IRB of record, we want you to say yes to this question because DH would not be the IRB of record in that scenario. So the local PI. Oh, you can't see the top corner of my screen. So I'm logged in as the PI. It pulled in me as the PI. I'm sure you guys experience this now. If you go to create a study, you have to switch it out and actually identify who the PI is if it's not you. Same functionality here. What you're also seeing in these SmartForm pages is a lot of references to local. That's because the new functionality in the system does have this multi-site component, and we want to make sure we're asking you for things that are local, not to your external sites. Tomorrow, we will walk through some of the different terminology. It'll be local versus site, and we want to make sure we're really clear on what information we're entering where.
But when you say multi-site, and I know that's tomorrow, you guys you're one of multiple sites.
It could be.
With an alliance study where we're one of multiple, or do you mean we're the lead site and we have?
It depends. There's multiple scenarios that you can have with multi-site, right? So whether you're the lead or the participating site, how you interact with the system will change. Yep. Okay. Does the local PI have a financial interest related to the research? You can say yes or no. One thing I'll tell you about this is it doesn't change your SmartForm experience. What this is going to do is let our COI team, whether it be the college or at DH, know that there's a potential conflict they need to look at if they haven't caught it at the grant proposal time frame. Attach a protocol. So, sorry, this is going to pop up over here. You can choose a file. We have our template protocol. We'll just do it. You have the ability to name and add a version number to your protocol. If you don't, it's just going to take the name of the document and your version is just automatically 001. So if you have some internal way that you're managing your documents, you're able to do that here.
There were a few pages in the current version where you drag and drop files.
Oh, you can drag and drop here.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Still available. Yep. All right, so I've completed everything that has a red asterisk on this page. I shouldn't get any errors when I move on to continue. Okay, so now you'll see within the SmartForm pages, we have a jump to menu, and now all of the other pages that are relevant to the research appear for us. So the first question we have is about study funding sources. That's going to be very familiar to you all. The funding organization, funding ID, grant ID, and any files you need to attach. We're still going to have the selector list. One thing we're doing right now is just cleaning up the funding sources that are available in report and make sure we don't have duplicates or spelling errors, and then we'll load it up. For this, I'm just going to select one that's here on the first page so it doesn't take too long to search through 4,400 records.
Did those just pop up in a new window?
Yes. Yeah. So when I'll actually back up. I'll hit cancel. So one of the things you can do here is just start typing the name. And things with national in it are coming up, right? If you don't want to do that, if you want to move to the selector list, and that did pop up in a new screen, I just had to drag it over. You can filter it in a variety of ways. I would say name is probably the best way when it's a funding ID. And one of the things you can do here is use the wildcard, that percentage. So if I just wanted to do NIH, it should find the NIH for me. So even though there's 4,400 records, there are ways you can search in here that make it a little bit easier for you. So we'll just add the NIH.
If the funding company isn't one of the options, is it going to be the same thing where we email you guys?
Yep.
And add it?
That's right. Yep, same process. So the funding ID, grants office ID, and then any files you want to attach here, you can provide. We can say okay. If I say okay, it's just going to close out the screen. If you say okay and add another, same window pops up, and then we can add another funding source. And I'll just add one more.
Candace, I have a question.
Yes.
Because we have a lot of these sponsors that are in our grant suite system, is there any sort of way to have the two systems linked to pull those sponsors in so that if we add a sponsor on the grant suite, it's also being added to the eIRB and it doesn't have to be emailed multiple times to be added?
You know, that's actually a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, but can I write that down and we'll get back to you on that?
Absolutely. I think it just would make things easier and make lives easier for us.
Don't add it. And yeah, and one thing I'll say to that is maybe it's an internal process that between us and grants we manage it versus, right. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, we can definitely look into it. Okay, let's say okay. So I've added a couple of funding sources. One thing I want to point out about this screen, so part of what you're seeing in the new version of this system has to do with the multi-site scenario, which we added as a result of the NIH single eIRB mandate. But the regulations changed as of January 21st of this year, so a lot of things that are happening in the system are specific to the rule change as well. One of the things that's different with your experience with the system is this study funding source is no longer a required question. That's because the grant congruency review mandate went away from the feds. NIH still has a policy that says we do need to do some sort of review, so we are still asking for funding information, but that's why that's no longer a required question in this module. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. Local study team members. So these are the people that are DH, or if you're a college employee, but it's your study, who are your local study team members, right? And so each person identified in the design, conduct, or reporting of the research. Same as with the funding sources page, who are your study team? So I know I had this question last week at the retreat. Old studies, if you were a study team member, you're still a study team member, nothing changes. You don't have to redo any of the work for your already approved studies. It's just a new submission, okay? So this is data that was taken from the rapport system. So all of the names and registered users are available here. You can search again. Pretty sure I could get a hit with this. Yeah. So, you know, we'll just add Roger as one of our study team members. You can identify their role in the research. This is the list that comes standard with this system, but we are also going to add in some of the other roles that were in rapport that might be more familiar and used by you frequently. So you won't be, you won't only have this list come go live. You'll also have some of the other names that are familiar to you, roles in the research. We'll call Roger a co-investigator. Is this person involved in the consent process? The reason we ask this is because now we need to make sure that that person is actually qualified, been trained, knows how to obtain consent. So that's just a question we need to know the answer to. We'll say yes. Does this team member have a financial interest related to the research? I'll say no, but again, if I say yes, it's not going to add any more pages for you all. It's just the trigger so that we can make sure the COI does their review. Say okay. If I say okay, this is going to close. If I say okay and add another, that means it's just going to pop up and give me the option to add more study team members. I think you guys get it, so we'll just say okay. Okay. External team member information. So to your point, it says drag and drop. If you have a file, we can still drag and drop here. This is where we'd expect to see some sort of spreadsheet or anybody who might not be on the local study team. You can list them out, tell us about their training requirements, things like that. I'm not going to add anything right now, but that's how we would use that field. I'm actually going to back up. This is important now that we're in the new space. Because I said this was a single site study, I wouldn't expect to see external investigators that were maybe you're collaborating with University of Wisconsin. I wouldn't expect to see them here. This is a single site study. So if you had someone external here, I would think of this, maybe Dr. Burnett, this is something that would be specific to your type of research, where maybe you're working with individual clinicians at private practices that wouldn't be affiliated with an institution. Maybe that's where this group would live, okay? Study scope. So this is a little bit different. We used to ask 3 questions here. Now we're only asking 2 questions here. Do you use a drug or biologic? I'm going to say yes, just so you can see the smart form pages. And does the study evaluate the safety or effectiveness of a device? And I'll say yes to this. The other question we used to ask in that page was about local research location. Well, it was about research locations in general. Now it's local research locations. If you think to rapport, you guys have a list of a bunch of different hospitals that you select off who's involved in the research. We add them here. So the list is small, and we want the list to be small because this should only be local locations where you're conducting research, right? So think about these as places that would fall under the Dartmouth-Hitchcock umbrella. Like I said, if you're collaborating with UW, we don't want to see them here. They're not a local research location. They would be an external site. So So we'll say we're doing some work with Bedford. Say okay. You also have the ability to add locations here. I would encourage you not to. In the local research locations, this really needs to be the ones that are in that list. If for some reason we've missed something, you can add it, but we likely would send this back and say, you're doing a multi-site study. If you're working with this group, you'll have to go back through your SmartForm pages. Okay, so I've added that local location. Drugs and biologics. This operates essentially the same, so I'm going to add my drug. We've got the list. One of the things we're doing right now is also going through and cleaning up this list so that we're getting rid of duplicates and things like that. But all the drugs you guys have entered into the system into this point will be there come July 1. If something isn't there, you still have the ability to add generic and brand name.
Are you making the connection between, sorry, I deal with a lot of studies that are phase 1 studies.
Mm-hmm.
So the drug tends to have this fun letter number combination. Somewhere during the course of that study, it may end up having a more generic name like the patent that you chose there. And of course, later on, it gets the actual brand name, which is whatever it is. The current system has sometimes had trouble associating all 3 to the same item.
So my understanding in the way that our drugs list works is that you have the generic name and the brand name. So you couldn't have a third, like what you're getting at. So if it's the case that you would have a modification later to, it's not really adding a drug, but maybe you need to update the drug name, you can do that. Your history would show the change that you've made. But no, to your point, there isn't an ability to link multiple names as that drug develops.
Because essentially there's the investigational name, the generic brand.
Yeah. Point well taken. And I think that's something that we could actually bring back to submit as a ticket, as an enhancement request to the entire product, because I think that's not going to be unique to here. That would be a lot of folks that use the system. So thank you. Yeah, I like to bring that back. So here we have the ability to attach files related to the drug. So if you have a package insert, we would want to add it here. Anything that's relevant to the drug, go ahead and add it here.
Would you add an IMD there as well?
Yes.
Ooh, that's good.
Yep. You can. Will this study be conducted under an IND? I'm going to say yes, just so you guys can see now that we have some branching logic. So now if you're going to identify each IND, you can add the IND number, who holds the IND, the sponsor, the investigator, other. I'm going to go ahead and say investigator, but if it was other, we'd want you to tell us who holds it, if not one of the 2 listed.
What if they're the sponsor investigator?
You know, I think in that case, you can select either, and then in other, you could just tell us same, they're the same. And I'm sorry if I'm not looking at whoever's asking the question, because I don't always see.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Are you going to need IND documentation like the FDA letter or anything?
We would like that, yeah, because that's really how we can confirm what information
And would
you
that
have.
go on, is there a space for that on the other page, or is it at the support documents?
So anything
Okay.
that's related,
Attachments.
yeah. No, you're okay. All right. Any other questions about the drugs page before I move on? Okay. Devices. So very similar to the drugs page. Let's select each device that the study will use, or a HUD that'll be used. So select the device. Uh-oh, you guys caught us. We don't have any in the system yet. So I can add one. Oh, of course, I pick things. Is this a HUD? Yes or no? I'm going to say no. Attach any files related to the device. That is totally spelled wrong. All right, it's not going to validate my spelling, I'll tell you that. Okay, so device exemptions that are applicable to this study, IDE or HDE, whatever you select. Claim of an abbreviated IDE, exempt from IDE requirements. So you guys select, you let us know. We're going to do our review when it comes in to make sure we can confirm whatever you're telling us here. We've got our IDE or HDE number. So, who holds, sponsor, investigator, or other. Okay. So now that's nice for us. You don't have to go dig in there. We can see right when you submit. And then attach any files.
So that's taking place in that device form we used to have to fill out?
Yes. So this is a big thing to point out. We don't want multiple attachments and forms. You're not going to see the device form anymore. You're not going to see a different drug form anymore. Your protocol is going to ask you for the relevant drug or device information, but there's not a separate attachment. Put the data in the system that the system needs, and then we'll look at your protocol for the relevant information. Yeah.
So back on the drug side, we had to do the ID. If we had said no, is there a place for any information that has to be done for like an IND exemption or anything like that? Information. So if we have a study that we would normally have submitted an IND exemption.
No, we don't have the separate form. And when pre-review happens, when it comes in, now if you still need to go through a process, and if you're just telling us it's IND exempt, that's fine. We're going to look in the protocol, and we're going to make that initial determination at pre-review. So that is a change, I think, from current state is you guys are asking or getting questions in those forms that are maybe better answered by the IRB or not that you guys don't know the regs, but you guys are the scientists. We want you guys to do that work. We want to focus on the regs, and then we'll get. You still do have that touch point. I think it's with Christina now about the IND IDE review. We can start looping her in on some of these things. She'll be an ancillary reviewer in the system, but it's the IRB office's job to say whether or not it's IND exempt or, the information about the devices. We're making that initial decision, and then we're giving that information to the board so that we document it.
So instead of us trying to convince you and saying that it deserves an IND exemption, you guys just decide.
Yeah. And, again, we're not dictators. So if we make a decision, you're going to be able to see the information we walk through in the worksheet to say why we believe it's exempt or why we don't. And then you guys will see the same criteria that we do. And if there's a misunderstanding, we have a conversation. So it's not the end of the world. If we disagree, we can always have a discussion. Okay, so we walked through drugs, we walked through devices. Local site documents. So again, this is calling out where the documents that we want to use locally. So consent forms. Here's where you have created your consent form, and we'll attach it here. You also have the ability to name and give it a version number, like I said before. It's just going to take the name of the document and add the version if you don't have anything specific. Recruitment materials, we can add that here. Any other attachments that you might have. I'm going to try to be fancy and just prove that I can drag and drop. Oh, don't open. I know we can. I don't know why it doesn't want to take that file, but you can drag and drop. Okay, so any other attachments that you might have. The category here, these are the same categories you guys had in the other system. I didn't want to take them away and making the transition. You just might see some additional names of things that were not there before. Things that will go away though. So different forms, and maybe some of the cleanup has already happened. So you wouldn't see like the drug form or device form. We're not going to ask for that. So things we're not asking for anymore, we're going to take out of the list.
So instead of supporting documents page, it was under other attachments.
Yeah, local site documents. Okay. That's it. It's your final page. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah?
So you guys, one of your template documents was, I forget what it's called, it was like one that replaces the protocol plus.
Site supplement.
Yeah. Does that get uploaded with protocol or as other attachments?
You know, I take it in either place. It doesn't offend me wherever you guys put it. So, you know, local site documents is a great place for it. But if it's a multi-site study, you have the protocol and then you also want to attach your site supplement there. That's not wrong or bad.
Okay.
So we'll take it in either spot. One of the things we're not going to do is if you attach something in the wrong spot, I'm not going to tell you to move it. You know, it's fine. If it's in the right place and, you know, we can get to it, it's fine. It's not the end of the world.
Could you go back to that list of items that could be done under other documents?
Yes.
So one of the things that I'm just putting there and always wondering why there isn't a category name for was consent form templates. In other words, things provided
Tomorrow.
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 Because it would only be multi.
It's when you're in a multi-site scenario. So this is where we have your local site documents. I wouldn't expect to see a template here. I'd expect to see something that you've filled out and submitted for review. Now, tomorrow we'll show you where you'll have a place, and my memory is acting right today. You're not going to see, so you're going to have a site, lead site documents, and it's going to say consent form template, like right there on the screen. So we'll talk about that tomorrow.
So for an initial, the departmental scientific review, we previously had uploaded for the initial ones, those plus the minutes, everything in a different location. Do you want them under the other attachments here for the initial, so we can just put all of like our scientific review department stuff? Do you guys still want minutes for their initial meeting?
Yeah, so I talked to Erin Lynch and she said that's something that you all are used to providing now. I'd like to keep that process the same, and then maybe, you know, as time goes by, we'll evaluate that. But I do think that it is something that if the eIRB, so there is a component of the eIRB that does look at scientific merit, even though that's not our primary charge. We have to make sure the science is good, so we're not putting patients at risk for no reason. So then it is helpful to see what the SRC or CCRC has said so that we know that it's been approved.
So is there no more child form?
No more child form.
So where do you put that information?
Protocol.
But there's still a genetic.
That form's going to go away.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, we're still doing some cleanup on this list. This is our training environment. But if it's information, so, okay, I'll point out enrollment of vulnerable populations. That's going to go away because that information is in your protocol. We really want the protocol to drive your submission, not a bunch of separate forms. Reduces error and the amount of paperwork, at least paper management.
So I see investigator brochure, sorry. I see investigator brochure here. Is this the preferred place for it?
I would honestly say I personally would like it to live with the drugs. And but if you attach it here, I'm not going to say you're wrong. Okay. Yes?
Is there, so currently in report, there's the department sign off?
Mhm.
Where we request that, is that gonna be the same?
We're going to use basically the same forms. It's just going to look more like the toolkit documents. And so that'll be a form we expect to see.
Well, request it through.
Yeah.
So you can send it to the person.
That is something we're discussing this afternoon. So help me understand that. So how do you request it in rapport?
It's an ancillary review.
So you
that's all it
manage
is.
the ancillary review that way.
We select
Perfect.
people who need to review it, request to require it.
Great.
And it gets
Great.
sent to them and then they sign off on it.
Okay.
So that way there's no form that form that needs to be signed and then you just need to put in or anything. It just gets.
Okay.
notification emailed them.
This is all good information. Thank you.
We have been doing the same thing with CCRC.
CCRC.
Although
Well-
we have letters there as well.
So we're compiling our ancillary review list right now. And I actually have been working on I don't know if I have it up, but I'm happy to show it to you. Yeah. We are working on this form right now that we'll post on the website, but it's who needs to be done prior to submitting to the IRB. So we're just talking about this right here, right? So it sounds like as long as we can get the right names plugged in, we should be able to leverage rapport. We can do that.
So on an initial submission, does the PI still have to do the initial submission and then transfer everything to the coordinator?
Yeah, so in the
Submission,
system,
I should say, to the coordinator after that.
in the so we still have PI proxies. Those are still available here. So actually, what I'll do is to answer your question, I'm going to actually get to the last page and get out to the study workspace. So manage ancillary reviews we were just talking about, that's still available here. Assign PI proxy, that's still available here. But yeah, the PI really should be the one that's submitting
On the initial,
on the initial.
should be, but
We don't do that.
right now we can't do it until he just after this initial submission, then he can do the proxy.
Okay. But
You can do the proxies before the submission.
Is there, well,
They don't want us to.
it's like,
and I haven't hit submit yet, and I can assign the PI proxy. So
But you're under PI.
so my question is currently there is a notified PI. So for instance, like if USTR, we will fill out all this, we'll send a notification to the PI and they can look at it and they then assign proxies and then we can go in afterwards and submit on their behalf.
let me take that back to Lee.
Part of the reason too is because the manage ancillary reviews option isn't available until currently, like in report, isn't available until like for PI for the proxies to be set up. So you can't manage ancillary reviews if you want proxy. So we had to do this thing where basically the PI has to sign proxies so we could go back in and manage the ancillary reviews.
Okay. That seems not exactly how this would work. So let me take that back. I want to do some testing with that and make sure, based on my permissions that I have, my different roles, I can give you a better answer about how that would work. Yeah.
Let me give you another piece of the rationale behind it is that we tend to start the form a little bit before we actually have everything together, partly because of the assigning PI proxies For some of our PIs takes a while. Some of them are very, very prompt,
Okay.
but some of them take a while. So if we start this a little bit in advance, so at the point where we have proxies assigned, there might be a document or two that's not in its final form.
Mhm.
So we actually don't want the PI to submit at
Sure.
that point because we only just have to say, you only just have to withdraw it and redo it, all this other stuff.
Okay.
I mean, if you guys are lucky and you actually have everything perfect at the point where the PI is going in, oh, God bless you all.
I don't think you ever really hear the process is perfect, right? So I really appreciate the feedback, and we definitely have a discussion about this afternoon, and I'm happy to see what I can do to accommodate sort of what's been happening. Yes.
Hi, regarding devices, I heard discussion about IDEs and exam, but where's the provision for to get this device and for the PI to submit that judgment?
So we want the information in the protocol, and we want to see what your all initial take is within the protocol, so the description of that device, and then the IRB makes that determination. I know by regulation, it says the PIs make that decision, and then the IRB basically confirms it. We want you to make that decision in your protocol. We want you to tell us and provide any supplemental materials that support that. And then the IRB staff looks at it and says, yes, this makes sense. And then during our board meetings is when we finally would say, and we put it in our minutes. So,
But there's no checkbox.
There is a checklist that will be uploaded with all of our toolkit documents that is specifically for non-significant risks. So take that checklist, plug that information straight into your protocol, so it's there.
Oh, I just wondered on the main submission form.
there's not a checkbox for you all. Yep. Okay. So a couple of things I just want to talk about this page. So pre-submission, that's the state that you're in. So that tells you all when you log in, you haven't actually got it to the IRB office yet. Your study ID did generate here. The PI name, the type of submission, who the primary contact is. Whoever creates the submission is the primary contact. That's just the way the system is set up. The PI proxy, you can assign.
You can assign multiple proxies, correct? Is there-
Let me check on that.
Okay, because we definitely need more than one.
Okay. I cannot promise things like that can be accomplished by July 1. I just want to let you know because this has to do with system customizations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm
and when
happy.
when we set up before, that was one of the
Okay.
things I think that they did.
Okay.
We did have to request those multiple proxies.
Okay. So I could add Roger as a PI proxy. And I just did that on my screen because he's listed on the study team. You know, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but this does say PI proxies. So let me just confirm. Let me just confirm. I don't like giving bad answers to anybody, but let me just confirm. And then IRB coordinator, you don't see anything yet because it hasn't been sent over to the IRB side of the house just yet. So things you can do in the pre-submission state, you can of course edit anything about that study before it's made it over the submission line. You can look at the printer version. View differences is here, but there's no differences to view yet. So tabs you have available to you, funding. So it's just listing our sources, contacts, should just be our study team members, documents. So all the documents that you've submitted so far, well, or will submit. Ancillary reviews, we haven't added any just yet. Snapshots. A snapshot is taken when there's a state change, so there's no snapshots yet. You haven't actually submitted and moved it from pre-submission to submitted, so that's why there's no snapshots. So if you want to manage your ancillary reviews, this can be where we're adding in CCRC. You can add it by organization or person, and then the review type. So yeah, there. Like I said, we still have to fix all these different lists. Is a response required, yes or no? So I'd say yes, because you can't actually submit until you have that done. Say okay. The system doesn't stop you from submitting. So you can say yes to that question, and it's still going to let you submit to the IRB. It's our job in the IRB office to know, we can't actually send this for review. And I will say that rather it sit in my bucket and count against my metrics, I'm going to send it back to you all and say, no, that has to come back once CCRC is done. Add a comment. So if you add a comment here, it's something that would be logged publicly in the history. So, hi, CCRC pending. Oh, sorry, I want to try to drag this over so you can see what's happening on my screen. Add any supporting documents. Who should receive a notification of this? It can be no one, but you can select, say, PI. Okay. So now if I go back to my history tab, you just see there the comments hanging out there and we can all see it. Yeah.
I believe currently in rapport, when we add comments in situations where there's clarification requested, you have the comment, but even if you click that you'd like the IRB coordinator to see it, it doesn't actually go to them. You have to then submit another modification or something so that it alerts them that there's something different.
Submit response.
Yeah, submit response.
Yeah.
That's the
Submit
one.
response and the notification and adding a comment.
Does not, yeah. So is that still
Right.
the same?
That is, right, because whenever something is in your bucket, so if it's in pre-submission, that means it's with the study team. Once you move over to pre-review, you've got it into the IRB office. As soon as it comes into clarification requested, now you've moved it out of our bucket. You can't actually do anything with it until you submit a response.
Okay.
So you have to submit a response to that clarification requested to get it back into pre-review so that we can actually do something.
So you'd still like us to add a comment and submit the response? We can't just submit the response?
It depends on what it is, right? So if it's me literally asking you a question and I don't need you to make changes to any of your smart forms or study documents, a response might be okay in the comments, but you'd still have to say submit a response. So it may just make more sense to say submit your response, and within that response tell us whatever we've been asking. I don't think it's really good practice for us to be communicating with one another via the history tab comments. It's a thing that's available, but I don't think that that's the right mechanism, because we want the audit trail of the IRB asked a question, you guys have responded. We want to see that full loop happen just like it's outlined here. And if I really have a question for you, I would hope I just call you, you know, if it's something like that, rather than work within a system.
Well, that's how now, like I've been told, they don't do the comments, they just email the person that's doing the preview and deal with that. That's,
Yeah.
Instead of actually adding
Yeah.
a comment.
Right,
yeah,
right.
It's just a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't actually see the comments. It's when
No.
they have to go.
And I didn't know that until they told me, oh, we don't even see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what we want to do is use the system where it makes sense to use the system. Now, I will say, if there's something that needs to be changed and there's part of whatever we're discussing via email, then that becomes either, if it's in your bucket or my bucket, something that we need to get into the system. So there's then a communication that we need to upload, because if it's a study relevant communication, we can't just talk about it offline and then it never exists somewhere. And I say offline, like off of the system, right? So it could be that now there's an email chain that we have to get uploaded into the system for our records. We want to make sure it's very clean. Okay, so we talked about ancillary reviews, proxies, primary contact, manage the guest list. I don't know how often or if you guys even use that now. That's more relevant on the IRB side. And let's say we have a consultant that needs to review this who isn't necessarily a member of the IRB, then they can actually be added as a guest and just view your submission. I don't know that you all would use it, but it is an option available to you. The studies just read only to them. They can't take any actions. You also have the ability to copy the submission in case you had to withdraw it or something was really, wonky. Or it's basically the starting point of a new study that's happening, so you can copy it and create a new study. You can also discard if everything you did, you're just not ready to move forward with, so there's no point in keeping the record around. Before I hit submit, the other thing that I want to point out to you, in the library, so we're going to have a lot of the documents available on the website. This won't say CPHS anymore. But our forms will also be available in the system so that you don't have to bounce out to the website. So we will update this library. Policies and guides, you'll see things like the toolkit and HRPP plan and the investigator manual. So, and we will have tools for you on how to navigate the system. Worksheets. So these are worksheets that are part of the toolkit. So I think, we were talking about devices earlier. So I'll just bring this up. But the point of having this library available is so that you all don't have to bounce around to a bunch of different places to get the information that you need. So just, oh, look at that training store giving us fake things. Okay, so the real version will be available on our website, but yeah, we do have all of those things in the library available to you. So I'm going to go back to my inbox. So now we see that demo study that I didn't submit just yet. The last thing I'll do is go ahead and hit submit. There is an attestation page. And now it's moved on to pre-review. So now you can't do a lot with this study. You're not able to edit it anymore because it's moved out of your bucket and now it's with the IRB office. And now it becomes our job. We've turned it over. We've got to do our pre-review. So we only got 2 minutes left. Any other questions I can answer for you guys?
Whenever your worksheets or anything like that is going to be updated, is that something that will be sent, like a notification we send out that new ones are uploaded?
Yeah, I think what makes sense is, and what I can tell you from the toolkit is worksheets and checklists are typically the things that are not changed very often because those are based in the regs. Now, the rules just changed for the first time in 20 years, so we did have to update some. But yeah, we need to also keep all of you updated on, let's say there's a template change. Let's say we update a template and of course there'd be a grace period for accepting the old template versus new. But yeah, we need to be in regular communication about changes.
Are there any other forms that, because currently there's always forms that have to be uploaded with this, but other than the site-specific information form, are there any other additional forms that might have to be uploaded with the initial submission?
Besides that departmental or scientific review form, your consent form, your recruitment materials.
In addition to the study documents, since we're not going to have device forms, we're not going to have exemption forms, I'm just trying to think if there was anything.
The only thing I can think about, and I don't know how frequently it happens because we're not an academic colleges, but we do have a template for letters of support from schools if you were going to do research in schools, but that's different. It's not like a form telling me about your study. It's an actual, a supplement to your study. So nothing jumps out at me. Jocelyn, our goal was really to compile all those forms and get it into the protocol So that would, no, Protocol Plus is gone. We have the site supplement, and that's used if you have maybe an industry sponsor protocol and you need to supplement that with the site supplement to tell us what you're doing locally that's different from the larger trial that's happening across the country. Or if you have a multi-site study where maybe the lead site, even if we're the lead site, it could be the case that you're writing that template protocol and then you have that site supplement that tells us what are you doing locally though. So we don't want to see the same information repeated across a bunch of documents. All right. Dare I end the session? All right. Thank you so much. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time. Thank you so much for being here.